Hi, I'm Matt Leacock, and I'm here to give you an overview of the cooperative game, Daybreak. As the name suggests, this game lets you imagine a break with the past on climate. Imagine we have pressured the world leaders to take the climate crisis seriously, to both decarbonize all aspects of society and to protect communities from climate shocks around the world. In Daybreak, the players represent up to four world powers: the United States, China, Europe, and the majority world, all attempting to decarbonize their economies, while at the same time protecting their people from crisis. The game takes place over the shared board, and each player has their own player board. The player boards track different things: the amount of electricity each player generates, the amount of emissions they create, their resilience, and the number of communities they have in crisis. One of the main things you have to contend with is the amount of carbon each player generates each round. If you look at a player board, you can see all of these gray tokens. Each one of these will produce one carbon cube each round. That carbon is all thrown into the recent emissions area of the board here. These emissions then get sequestered by the land and sea of the planet. To represent this, you can match up the tokens and cubes like this. The carbon that's left in the atmosphere, these are the excess emissions. If the players can reduce the excess emissions to 0 or less during a round, they've reached net zero emissions and everyone wins the game. If you don't hit 0, the excess emissions are then added to the thermometer like this. Whenever you fill a row, swap out the tokens for a temperature band. This represents an increase in temperature. So as you can see, as the excess emissions accumulate, the temperature rises. Next, you see what effects this increased temperature has on the planet. You draw one planetary effects token per temperature band. Draw them out of the bag and place them onto the board. These might increase the temperature, they might cause more emissions, or have lots of other negative effects. Then you see what effects the temperature has on your communities. You'll resolve this number of crisis cards. And as you can see, this number also goes up as the temperature increases. These cards have a number of effects, but the most common effect is to endanger communities. You determine how many communities to endanger based on the temperature and how much resilience you have. Here's an example card. In this case, you need to endanger one community for each temperature band on the thermometer. So for example, if there are 5 temperature bands, you need to put 5 communities into crisis on your player board. That's bad because if any single player has 12 or more communities in crisis, everyone loses the game. You can protect yourself though with resilience, these little shields. In this example, you can reduce the number of communities you put in crisis for every social resilience you have. So, what can you, the players, do about all of this? Well, as players, you're going to want to focus on two different things. First, reducing the amount of carbon you generate, all those gray tokens. Next, increasing the resilience of your communities to help protect them. Let's walk through the order of play to see how this is done. The first thing you do each round is the conference step. You can think of this like a COP conference where the world comes together to discuss things. In this step, you'll draw and place the crisis cards that will affect you that round. 2 of these will be forecast and 1 will be unknown. You can talk about these as a group and what you should do about them. Then you'll draw 2 global project cards. As a group, you'll select one of them to play. These global projects have new rules or abilities that will affect everyone at the table. Then you'll draw your income in opportunity cards. Each player starts by drawing 5 cards to add to their hand. After the conference step, players do the action step. During the action step, players make use of their opportunity cards. These cards can be used in 3 different ways. First, players can do any actions printed on the cards in their tableau. Your tableau is the set of cards that you start with that appear above your player board. Each card shows a different action, and many of these cards have costs. First, it's important to know that there's no money in the game. Instead, you'll spend cards from your hand. For example, this card lets you discard 1 card from your hand to add 1 resilience of any kind to your player board, while this action lets you discard a card to remove 1 dirty energy plant from your board. That'll help reduce the amount of emissions you produce each round. However, you'll want to make sure that you produce enough electricity to meet your electricity demand, represented by this blue peg. As you pull these dirty plants off your board, you'll need a way to generate more electricity. You can do that by using this action. For every card you spend, you can add 1 clean electricity plant. The second thing you can do with these cards is play them from your hand in order to make a new action available. When you do this, you'll cover up the old action. It will no longer be available, but its tags will still be visible. These tags are often used by the action in front. For example, if I play this card here, I can now remove one dirty energy plant for each regulation tag in this card's stack. Since I now have 2 of these tags in this stack, it's twice as efficient. Finally, you can tuck a card from your hand behind another card in your tableau to make use of its tags. For example, I can tuck this card with a grid tag behind this card. So now I'll make 2 clean energy plants, 1 per tag, whenever I use this action. Players may do as many actions as they like and in any order they like. Usually it makes sense to talk about your actions and make some plans with the other players. When everyone is done doing actions, you do the emission step. In the emission step, you first check to see if you meet your electricity demand. For every electricity plant that you're short, you'll need to endanger 1 community. Then you'll add up all the gray tokens on your board and put 1 carbon into the recent emissions area for each one. You'll sequester the carbon below. And finally, shift over the excess emissions to the thermometer. Then it's time for the crisis step, where you'll draw planetary effects tokens and resolve crisis cards that I explained before. Finally, you do the growth step. Here, every player increases their electricity demand. The US and Europe increase it by 1, China increases it by 2, and the majority world increases it by 3. You then advance the round token, and you're ready to do it all again. The game ends and the players win the game if you're able to reach net zero, meaning you have 0 or fewer tokens in the recent emissions area, and you survive that round. You all lose the game if any player has 12 communities in crisis, the temperature ever goes above 2 degrees Celsius, or you take longer than 6 rounds. So that's Daybreak in a nutshell. Good luck!